talk a little bit about AI if you want.
Where do you want to go with that?
Well, I mean, I think it's like maybe if you're not already thinking about it as a marketing organization and or as a business, you should probably be investing some time and energy into learning about it, at least what's possible, probably watching some research videos. It's happening. Images, text.
Yeah, I think my stance on AI at the moment is like it's not going to eradicate
The thinking.
marketing jobs. What it's going to do is
Well,
it's going to like jobs as a whole, right? Like it's not like the end of times. What it really is,
right, yeah.
it's more of an efficiency tool. And I think to your point, like
Yes.
that's where the education needs to be is can you source images faster?
if anything, what I think it's going to do is push the thinking even more so, and it's going to move. It's going to flush out the people on the team that are, oh, I'm just putting graphic on the image. Oh, I'm just, trying to regurgitate a blog here, or I'm trying to do a basic post here. So it's like actually that stuff now can be done via AI. What can't be done via AI is how do I communicate my value proposition and what I'm trying to connect to my customer with,
That's what, yeah,
right?
exactly.
So the thinking, to your point, it's like I don't need 30 people now writing posts and all this kind of stuff. If we can get the right thinking into the engine, it'll do that work for us. Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com, episode 91. Who do we have? Just kidding. Episode 90. Who do we have?
Kevin Butler.
Michael Turksani. Oh, you didn't do Kevin Butler. Let him say Kevin Butler. Flick to him. Oh, you did? Okay.
Boom.
Boom. Michael Turksani.
Thanks, Harsh.
Man, we're rolling in on the 100s. We got 10 more to go. I feel like we need to get to 100 and then celebrate it.
All right.
Then we're shutting it down. Then we're shutting the podcast off. It's been good, but we're done. No. We're going to keep it going. But that's a good milestone, 100. Mm-hmm. We could have got there earlier if we were more on top of it and disciplined. But
I think,
we're
though,
not.
so I talk with clients all the time about podcasts, and you kind of get two answers. You get some clients will say, well, hey, yeah, I think we could do that. And others like, I don't know if we can do it. And it's sort of like, I always just say, just jump in. Like, you'll find a bit of a rhythm. It's going to take some to do it. Like, I think our 100th episode will be better than the first.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But you need to just be able to get comfortable doing it and finding something that works. And we've evolved a lot of how we do things, whether it's the production of things, the editing of it afterwards, and subsequent publishing, or even formats and how to get used to speaking about things in a way that works for you.
Yeah. But I also think it's like we've learned to do probably the most you can do with your post-production. That's like eking out as much of the content after the fact. One podcast gets us like X number of clips now. What are we at? Like 4 or 5 clips ish?
More like 8 to 10.
Almost 8 to 10, Harsh says, clips, so then you're getting a couple blogs, 1 or 2 blogs out of them. So at some point, I think depending on, the nature of your podcast and what it is, at least for us, like, we're not overwhelming our audience with, hundreds of clips a month and several podcasts a week kind of thing. Like, it's too much. So I think that's also looking at like the size for your business to say, hey, we're in the game. We're thought leaders. We've got I think consistency is probably important. You've always got content that you're able, we at Goose never have a backlog that's empty. There's always 1 or 2 podcasts that are behind us that are still coming down through that content pipeline. And I think that that's probably a good cadence for a lot of companies to have. They're in the mix. Hey, I don't need to hear from XYZ vendor every 2 days, but hey, I hear from them twice a month. That's pretty good. I can get in the inside track. I can watch some of their clips, right?
But also when you do a regular cadence of these kinds of things, you are just naturally staying more on top of trends and evolutions where they are topical and they can find themselves in your regular marketing programs, whether it's organic social posts or whether it's, end of month newsletters, things like that.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I always say is, unless you've got like a world-class writer he or she just naturally excels at writing, chances are it's going to be a lot easier and far more time efficient for your sort of public speakers and leaders of a company to sit down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes and just discuss things rather than try to put pen to paper or fingers to keys and actually type out something that makes sense.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think most audiences generally aren't consuming written content in the way they used to.
I think the written content, it's always difficult to really know. I think you look at your blog metrics and you try to discern how long are people on the pages and stuff like that. But there's always been this thing that we've talked about and agree with, that in a deal, especially for B2B, I don't even think it's necessarily a B2B versus B2C thing. You've got somebody that's evaluating your business. It might even be your customers that are evaluating your business again, and then they're churning. They're scanning. They're scanning your blog. They click into one. Hey, that looks pretty good. Oh, they're on podcast. Hey, they're doing a webinar. They're in the game. They're active, and they're whatever the industry is. Like for us, it's marketing, so maybe there's a little bit more emphasis for us to be in the game. But like, even if you're whatever, you're a paper provider to an organization that spends a lot of money to provide the paper that they need for whatever they're doing. Hey, these guys are in the game. Because if I go to XYZ competitor and I maybe am looking at them as an alternative and they're in the game and they're providing content and they're being thought leaders, like that's a problem. That really stands out against someone else. So I think that even if you are not, hey man, this is a blog that I could, gonna won an Academy Award for writing this blog. No, and it shouldn't be garbage either. You can't be on either ends of those spectrum, but something that's decent content that if somebody's going to go and review it and they're like, hey, that's a great company, I'm glad we work with them. Or, hey, we're considering working with them. They're putting out solid topics, right?
Yeah. I think right-sizing those kinds of formats too to, your target audience and where they might be in a sales cycle. Like I don't think at this point, at least for B2B and for marketing services, I don't think written is the format by which you want to attract new leads.
Yeah.
I think video, you want your top speakers talking about the trends and evolutions. How would we approach GA4 migrations or, transitioning from one email platform to another? Like, I think that's what we should be talking about in these kinds of formats. And maybe when they're further down the line of evaluating one agency versus another, maybe we can have a bit more of a written thing, a breakdown. What separates us? What makes us different? This is how we work. Is this for you?
Yeah.
So I think it's, again, right-sizing to like where they are in the sales cycle, but video is key. And maybe there's a way to do both, but I just think it's so much easier for organizations to sit down, a good sort of podcast editor, someone who can kind of piece this together, put some polish and branding on it, and actually get the things published and posted on the various channels. But for you and I, it's a lot easier to sit here and speak than it is to go write something.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think if anything, even we're challenged with, how can we do our best to distribute the content that we have? Well, I was on our blog the other day with Harsh because we were looking at something, and I was thinking, man, we have so much content. I don't know the visibility that it gets. I mean, I know we do paid promotions on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter for our clips. We've got obviously great organic social strategies that we publish. Some of the stuff makes it into our newsletter, but man, you could do more. You could do more.
Oh man, totally.
Even if you think of like some of the blogs that come off of like this, like there'll be a blog that's written off of this, likely, potentially, right? And those blogs are on our website, but they don't have clips embedded in them, or there's no separate like newsletter track that we have that sort of is an Unhinged track or something that puts the content out in a slightly different format so that it just has greater exposure. You don't want to like just send stuff for sending its sake, but I do think that companies struggle with, hey, I've created this great content now and it's in a resource section, and our resource section sort of shows the top 9 or the top whatever number, and it's like now you're into seeing things that like literally are from next month don't show because there's too many things on the first page. Like there's something there, I think, that everyone I think they struggle with getting the content, and then once you have it, you've got some decent stuff to show. It's like, how do we make sure that people know that we have it, right?
Yeah, I think what you need too is you almost need like your marketing manager, someone to be extremely aware of the content that we've filmed and shot in the past, because there's definitely recurring themes that pop up. Like in June of 2023, that we talked about 6 months ago, and like actually that was a really great piece then for what's going on now.
Could be reworked slightly.
You almost need like some sort of continuity marketing manager, but someone to be like, hey, there's an emerging trend of this and this. We've actually got something that really addresses that.
Yeah, like you used to call it evergreen, but I think evergreen was more like, let's not put a date on it and let's leave it there and maybe like republish it again next year. And I think what you're saying is like,
it's like retopical.
Yeah, like, hey, a year and a half ago we talked about this. This is a slightly different take on it now in 2023. So you're providing some context around that, but ultimately this still really applies. You link back to that original piece. And I think that's another example of being able to use the stuff that you have, right?
To maximize it. Because so 90 episodes, we're cutting something like, call it 8 to 10. Maybe we'll be conservative and say like 5
clips.
5 clips or snips as we call them. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden that balloons into, now you've got like hundreds of 30 to 90 second sort of clips of us talking about something that we think is a pretty good take.
Yeah.
And like, what are we doing with all of
I don't even think do we have all the clips on YouTube yet, Harsh? Maybe not. No, I think we need to go. That's another thing. Like you could have channels built out for this. But again, it's like, how do they know that the channel exists, right? Nobody goes to our YouTube. A few people do.
Right.
A lot of people watch them through the post or listen it on another platform. So even that awareness campaigns around like, there's a bunch of video here that you may want to check out. Because the clips or the snips, they don't go on the podcast network.
Correct.
They're really just snips for organic social, paid social, as well as we'll throw them on YouTube.
And I just think here's the other thing too, I talk about a bit with any client or prospect who's kind of interested in doing this podcast sort of video recording, is like the chances are, unless you're a highly influential organization in your industry or category, it's likely your audience isn't going to regularly be listening to you for 30, 40 minutes talk.
Right.
But I think the conversation's great because if anyone actually wants to, it's there. But it's the ability for someone on your team to pull those clips and snips to distribute them at will, wherever. Someone can easily consume a 60-second bit of their CEO talking about the future of XYZ. Mm-hmm. Like that makes total sense. You can put that on websites, blogs, social, like you name it. I think that's the value of it. And sometimes you got to have these big 30-minute recordings of a conversation, discussion, whatever, in order to get that great moment. And you've got the whole thing too, and those can sort of represent a bit of a promo for, hey, if you like this, go listen to the rest. But really, I think that's what they really represent.
Yeah, you're right. So we got into this Unhinged thinking we were going to talk about AI.
Well, I think we should use this moment. We'll keep this one brief because I think this is a good sort of like primer for content and the role that podcasts play.
Yeah.
But I think we should use this as a way to sort of promote. We're going to have an AI topic coming soon. And I think what we'll do is we're going to break down sort of where we see AI supporting greater efficiencies rather than eradicating jobs.
Yeah.
But I think what we'll also do is put together a bit of a list of various tools within AI that can support whether it's images, video, even sort of a level of writing or ideation kind of thing.
Yeah.
With recommendations there so that it's kind of a bit of a starting point for the role AI can play in driving greater efficiency within your marketing organization. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you touched on a few stages of the content development strategy or just like the overall kind of production process that you would go through. And I like that you talked about ideation as a step. But where we were going, and I think where we'll end up spending a lot of time, is that ultimately these things are not here to replace the thinking, and they likely won't. Yeah, hey, give me the top 5 based on X, Y, and Z. Like you have to know what to ask and how to ask it relative to your marketing strategy, your messaging strategy, right? If you do it right, I think using these AI tools, I think at the end of the day, it's going to free you up from the sort of monotonous sort of work that bogs you down and should give you more time to do that critical thinking, which I think your team and organization are really counting on you as someone who's in the seat, who knows the space, knows the organization, knows its customers, etc.
Yep.
Really put more critical thought into that rather than just like slaving away that image to make sure that this graphic represents this, this, and this, and you could easily task that out. So that should be a great episode. Yeah.
And we've used it. We've used a couple of the tools, ChatGPT being one of the bigger ones, to to develop content, to ideate, to do a bunch of the like various steps, posts, long form, short form,
Definitely
and
ideation.
a lot of ideation. And I think there's still a lot even like for us to learn in terms of how to best leverage it, because there's stuff that it'll do that like we don't, unless you really understand the system, it won't, you don't know how to best put into it, but it'll sort of refer back to components of the chat and just a number of different elements where if you know how to work it and you're able to describe what you're trying to achieve, then it'll do a greater,
It'll just help more.
It'll help you develop, whatever you're trying to do. Eventually I need to build
reminds me
this
so much
blog,
of
right?
Google, right? It was like, how do you effectively use Google?
True. Yeah. There was a day when it was like and then what happened is Google started to expose the search terms that were being, I'm looking for something and it's going to pop up a suggestion to say search suggestion.
But you know how I view it like this? Like there's two ends of the spectrum. There's the user and then there's Google, right?
Yeah.
And what happened over time is the user gets better at using Google. So they start creeping in like this.
Yeah.
And then Google's also getting better at being just a better product
Yeah.
for users, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of meet in the middle, and that's where efficiency is really brought to the forefront. And that's the same thing that's going on with AI. It's going to take even less time for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons, including adoption, technology is just further along.
Yeah.
But so we're all sitting here now in sort of AI, 1.0, trying to figure out, well, how does this help us? How can I use it? There's already some great use cases out there. I mean, just take 2 scrolls of LinkedIn and you'll see someone using it for a pretty cool application.
Yeah.
And then these tools themselves are, they're getting better by the day, it seems like. So I think we're going to hit that, rubber meets pavement sort of pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think there'll be a very accelerated transition, if you want to call it that, to all kinds of different applications. Obviously, we're talking about marketing.
But one thing's for sure, like if you're not learning these things now, you will be left behind.
100%.
Like, it's not to say like you need to learn AI in the next 2 years, otherwise you're unemployable. But I think like those who are really getting ahead are going to find a way to leverage these tools so that they can just do more in less time, or do the bigger thinking that they want to do, that critical thinking piece, without getting bogged down by kind of the little like grindy things. So.
Yeah, and I think the risk and the downside, and I think if anything, the probably the negative that could come out of this for a lot of marketers is that if you were already a button pusher and you were already kind of downstream, and you call it you weren't necessarily using your own human intelligence all that much in order to generate the marketing that you're looking for your company, for a variety of reasons. Maybe you're like not empowered to do so, or maybe you just don't really truly understand marketing. We've talked before that a lot of people are in marketing because it's come through either a tech lens, or they've come in through a school program thinking this is going to be the best thing, and it turns out they're not really into it, nor do they really have the skills to be a marketer. And you'll see it in like things like headlines or things like text on an image where you're like, do you really understand our business here? Because like if you did, you wouldn't write that headline.
But
So
here's an opportunity then. If that's you listening, I would say the opportunity at hand is for you to go understand how these tools can make your organization more efficient, and you can effectively go be the sort of internal leader of AI applications for your business.
I like that, and I do think there'll be roles there. That, I could see that. And in fact, I could see us hiring and or promoting somebody to be like an AI,
because I could see
lead,
that,
right?
Then it's like a kind of internal ops role. It's like the new MOps.
Yeah.
But, to me, it's like I could see every CEO being like, wait, we've got one person whose job it is to help leverage tools
Yep.
to go make our team more efficient. I think every CEO would be like, I'm interested in learning more.
But then where I was going with the potential neg is that if you are just looking to sort of push the buttons and get the content out that you need to get out, and then you go and you say to GPT, write me a 200-word back, and then or whatever, short blog about this, and you get something back and you're reading it and you're like, oh, this sounds good, I'll put it out there. I think the volume of, I don't know if it would go up or down. I suspect it would go up because people can create content much way easier than they have been able to in the past. The amount of less than stellar marketing content is going to go through the roof because people are just going to use it to generate, not really themselves being able to evaluate whether or not this even makes sense.
Sure.
And then it goes out there into the world, right? It's like, well, that blog, the framework of it's half decent, but I would have to make edits to it in order to better align it with our value, that kind of stuff, right? And then that doesn't happen. It ends up on a blog, and it's like, what?
I think you're definitely right. That's certainly a risk, and it's one it's not a stretch to envision that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like there's so many organizations today who are just crushing the content and messaging game either.
True.
We can all think of great companies.
Yeah.
So again, here's an opportunity for someone who's more not so much on the button pusher side, but one who is doing that critical thinking.
Yeah.
If you're able to really, whether you use AI tools for a starting place, a foundation of content, and then you take it to another level based on that, and it's more of that ideation thing, and you're really able to differentiate, I mean, you're going to really stand out in a class of marketers that there's probably a lot at the bottom, right?
Yeah. So we're gonna do one about AI. We're gonna use it. We're gonna use it to generate some stuff for the podcast. See how that goes.
The whole script.
Yeah. We're gonna do that. And yeah, I think that's it. I think we'll still have a job,
Ish.
right?
If you're critical thinking.
If you're a critical thinker, you'll still have a job, Okay, so that's a lightweight Unhinged.
Yeah, no bad.
It's a filler.
It's a primer.
It's a primer. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's to get people ready for the eventual. So I like it. I think that's good. Do you have anything to add, Harsh? No.
He's a no.
No. See, it's already tapped in. He's got Chat GPT on his phone.
All right.
Okay. Good. Thanks, guys.